Right, this is dry, so we can continue with our journey. So let's look at this central part of our painting. And I know that I did go over this part of my shape with that background color, or this color that we used here. But as a matter of fact, it's sort of in my favor because it connects these colors. We will bring a little bit more definition into this petal that will give us a little bit of, what shall we call it, relief. And I will also maybe change the color of that with a little bit of a wash. I basically did the same here. I sort of made my shape a little bit bigger than it's supposed to be. But we're going to make this work in our favor. Sometimes, it's all about the imagination, I believe, and how you sort of want to problem solve and create interest in your painting. So let's focus a little bit more on color and shape rather than on details. So we've got this sort of central area here that's mostly dominant in a yellow fashion, but there's some beautiful details in there that we're only seeing because we are zooming in. I mean, if we look at this from a distance, we don't see any of those details at all. So I believe it is a good thing sometimes just to keep a sort of thumbnail kind of view on your painting, because then you focus a little bit more on values and shapes rather than on detail that can really make you feel overwhelmed in your painting process. So let's sort of keep it at that and create a beautiful yellow that we can begin to paint in. And I think I'm going to go for a wet onto dry technique here, and then sort of flow from wet on dry into a wet on wet kind of situation. This particular petal over here is also going to be one of our darkest. That's going to connect with the values that we have over here. So we might have to do another layer in order to really punch up some of the darker shadows and values. So this is a good example during your painting process where you will become aware that your paints dry much lighter than the original color that you put down, and that is sort of maybe sometimes a saving grace, because you can think, oh, I really made that too dark, but in the end you might have to come back and make it darker still. So then it's going to sort of pan out and work in your favor. So let's get some water going here. Now let's look at the kind of yellow that we have here. So I definitely think I'm going to use my cadmium yellow, and I'm going to go for like a milky consistency in my paint. So that way I ensure that I've got enough pigment strength there to give me sort of what I'm looking for. And then at the same time, this is my quinacridone gold from Core, and it's finished. It was one of my favorite colors. Now there is a deep version of this coming with my new palette, but there's still a little bit of pigment on the side that is useful. So I'm going to just activate that little bit of pigment there that I've got. Even though I've got some cadmium yellow on this brush, I'm doing the ultimate sin here. I'm introducing pigment from another well into a pigment, what shall we call this, container, but it's okay. Eventually this quinacridone gold will dominate that bit of yellow, and it is the yellow family, so it's not like I'm introducing a complementary color or a completely different color to that, so it's not the end of the world. I'm just going to have that ready on the side, and the reason I want that color on the side, notice the sort of potency of this color compared to the cadmium yellow. So there's a lot of warmth in there that I want to drop into this mixture. So I think what I'm going to do, seeing that that pigment's on there already, I'm going to switch to my other brush. Maybe that brush is still too big. Let's go for this number 6 round brush. I'm going to remove most of the water from my brush because I want to have the strength of this mixture to my advantage. And I'm just going to load this brush. I'm going to drag off the excess. And I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to create a little bit of warmth. We're just going to pretend that this area is just covered up a little bit more with more petal here. So I can take it all the way to the edge, but I will leave a little bit of space there. Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just use it all. Okay, let's take it all the way to the edge. And here we have a connection anyway of some yellow. And I'm just going to almost release some of that pigment just to blend the two colors a little bit into each other. And that's going to neutralize some of that yellow because violet and yellow are opposites to each other on the color wheel. And that's also why this is looking quite vibrant, but I'm loving it. Okie dokie. I'm going to get back into my yellow and I'm going to bring it forward. That's maybe a bit much water, so let's control the water. I don't want a dam or a river of this color. I just want a little bit to make a connection here. And it's sort of, I'm going to make that a bit warmer. I'm just going to create a pathway for me here to just connect this shape that I have here. Although it's not as yellow, I just want it there. I'm planning it out there. Right. Now, I'm going to come in and grab this pigment now because I do like the toe of this brush. It's very sharp. I'm going to come and just drop some of this quinacridone gold on the side there and just give a little bit of texture. And I know that there is a bit of depth in this area as well. We're looking at this area basically over here. So I can drop a bit more of that gold there. And we're going to basically lose some of these details in my particular painting, seeing that I made these shells turn forward a little bit more. And sometimes that's the way it turns out. I would like to call this a mistake, but in the end, I think it can be a happy mistake. And I'm glad that it happens during a tutorial because all art doesn't always work out. And we are beginning to do something complex and doing a few more layers on top of each other. But, that's the whole point. Every sort of painting that we do should challenge ourselves to go beyond what we've been able to do before. So it's easy to paint a basic shape like we did earlier on in this watercolor for beginners, but you know enough now for me to begin to bring more sort of intermediate techniques together, and that simply means to have more than one area to paint in, because the basics is still the same here. We've got wet into wet, we've got wet on dry, we've got a bit of dry brush, and we've basically just played with those principles over and over again in each of these different shapes. And together, they are making a whole. They are telling the story of this beautiful orchid. So don't get overwhelmed in this process and feel like I'm, maybe going too fast. Just take your time and breathe through it and just enjoy the process. We've got a little bit of a yellow crowning moment here. My nodule is slightly facing this way. My shadow color came down too low here, but we're going to try and maybe lift a little bit of color there. But I do like what's happening, and we don't want to overwork our painting too much. Right, let's rinse off, and we're going to allow that to dry. And I'm going to focus now on these sort of areas, so we can let this yellow color go. But I'm not, letting it all go. Whatever's remaining here can be there to warm up our color, because I'm wanting to use my magenta. There we go. And this yellow is going to help to warm it up a little bit. But now we want also like a very coffee to milk like sort of mixture. I'm going to use, now that's the wrong color, forgive me. I'm looking for my red over here. I might as well rinse that brush. I didn't end up using it because I felt that the head of this brush was just too big for dropping in those little details there. Yes, okay, so I've got a nice, I think this is alizarin crimson. It's a nice deep red. We're going to need the depth because this is quite deep. So if you're going to use a cadmium red, it might be too bright. Okay, so we've got a nice strong mixture here of alizarin crimson, and I'm going to add a bit more of the magenta to it as well. Here we go. I'm also going to add a drop of this permanent rose. And now, with a different brush, I'm just going to activate my red-violet color here. Just bring in a drop of water and just get the pigment ready for me to pick it up at a moment's notice, because I'm going to use that very strong color to create the depth that we have here. But now notice this very delicate little line structure here. So we're going to do some negative painting, and we're going to sort of try and replicate that. Again, I'm challenging you a little bit more. And you create that by just painting around it. As simple as that. And then we're going to go and take our color in to that central node. Can you guys see how I'm dancing on the toe of my brush? And when I dab my brush, I'm releasing the water in the belly of the paintbrush, and more pigment is flowing into that area. Now that's quite wet, so I'm going to allow that to dry. Let's jump to the central moment. And again, I'm just touching the side of those little yellow lines that we created there. And these two are coming together like so. And then I'm going to allow that paint to connect to the center part there that's still wet. there's still enough paint in my brush. I'm going to use the toe of my brush. I'll be focusing on this side. And again, we've got a very interesting line happening here. So I'm going to create that central shape, taking care to leave the edge white, and then going in a little bit higher and create a bit of a wave structure there, like so. And then we basically go ahead and skip a little bit of a line there. As we fill in that little shape. Now it might feel intense simply because it's a small area, and it also took me a minute to get confident and get good enough brushes, invest in them, so that I have the ability to draw these fine lines. So don't be discouraged if you feel intimidated by these tight areas and little details. But you're going to see it's a lot of fun. Right, so let's bring that violet. And while this is wet, but it's not dripping wet anymore, I can drop in that violet color, focusing on this part of it that's really deep. The same here at the toe of this shape and at the base. And here on this side. And I'm just using what watercolor wants to do to my advantage, and that is to flow, right? And because the pigment is heavier than the water, that's why it flows out of your brush, and the paper is thirsty, so it's sucking the water out of the brush and into the paper. So it really is a synergy, it's a dance between all of these elements that is making watercolor so magical. We've got that shape right there. Pretty, 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 pretty. Let's drop in a bit more. That is amazing. I'm going to use this purple that's on my brush to talk a little bit about these shapes. It might be dry, it might still be wet. I'm taking a risk, I know, but I just want to place this beautiful deep color here in the core. And just talk a little bit about those textures that I see there. And here we also have an area that might be darker, that needs a little bit of definition. So I'm just going to ride on the very toe of my brush to just create a little bit of a shadow there, creating contrast that helps us to focus on that node. And then I'm just going to drop a few little dots here that talk a little bit about that beautiful texture and pattern that is found there in the back. I'm really just dancing on the toe of my brush. That yellow was definitely dry because I'm having some beautiful crystal clear patterns there that didn't flow, so that's perfectly fine. Our painting is starting to look really beautiful. So while that is drying, and I've got this purple going here, I'm going to add it to this mixture here. My first washes were quite cold already, so I'm going to use this sort of strength that I've got here. This violet is a little bit more to the warmer side because it's a red violet. It's not dark as in violet, which is a blue violet. Let's create that beautiful depth there. So I've got this mixture that's almost like milk, quite strong. It's going to be my final wash, and I'm just going to focus on areas that I really want to be deep and where the highest contrast is found in the painting. And then I will come in with a clean, damp brush, remove most of the water, and just soften the connection line by just painting with a damp brush next to it. And that will help blend that color and that edge so that we have a soft flowing edge. I'm just going to go ahead and place some pigment in the middle again. So whenever I see a hard edge, I can just go ahead and soften it with a damp brush. So that's just water control, isn't it? Beautiful. Okay. I see the same here. I'm going to strengthen this line where we've sort of softened it before. I'm deliberately skipping that edge, and I'm just going to soften that line. Beautiful. So it's always helpful to sort of have two brushes handy, one with clean water that you can blend with, and another one to apply a stronger wash. I'm going to strengthen that shadow there underneath. Show that I'm dragging off the water, and I'm just going to blend it in with some water. This shadow is quite important, and it gives me an opportunity to cut the shape up a little bit more. So I'm going to do that and unify this area. Okay, a little bit more here. Clean water, damp brush, blend that edge in. Beautiful. Now I will focus on this back leaf here. It connects a little bit more here. As well as here with an edge. Amazing. We have a very important bit here. Clean brush, water off. Just want to blend it into that area a little bit. Beautiful contrast. Beautiful contrast. I'm going to use this color to strengthen this zone as well. Wet brush, water off, and blend that area. I'm deliberately leaving a space empty there so that we have a bit of contrast there. Clean brush, clean water, water off, blend. Forgive me. I'm so happy with this. We've got a bit of strength going here, but this is definitely cooler. So let's cool this down a little bit. I'm going to add some phthalo blue. That's a sure quick way to cool something down. And I'm going to just create a bit of depth and shadow here. Here's my clean brush. Water off. And let's just soften that beautifully. I'm going to strengthen that line. Create that fold. Clean brush. I feel that this line is too hot over there. So I'm going to just take a clean brush and just diffuse that line. I need a little bit of that happy orange there. Let's warm this up a little bit here. That happy orange was the pyrrole orange. It's very potent. That feels beautiful, albeit maybe a bit much in orange, but it's okay. I needed that space to warm up a little bit. Now there's one last area that I will put another wash on, and that would be this area underneath this petal, and it would definitely only be to there. So this is a very strong mixture, closer to honey, and I'm just going to put a layer of that down right there. That's going to give us a beautiful contrast. And there we have it. We have done a beautiful watercolor painting of a beautiful orchid flower in watercolor. We've used all the basic techniques that I wanted to teach you guys that will give you a foundation on which you can build. And I hope that you will continue to support me here on Patreon as I give you guys more demonstrations and opportunity to develop your watercolor skill. So stay tuned because we're going to delve into some troubleshooting kind of solutions in the upcoming episodes. So don't go away. I'll see you guys real soon for that. And while I've sort of got this moment here, I thought